Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and in this video we're going to discuss the topic of which handgun in the Resident Evil 4 remake is the best. As it's an interesting area of discussion with no real right or wrong answers. Instead, there are certainly weapons superior for certain playstyles than others. Well, getting right into it, we have the SG-09, the Silver Ghost, Leon's custom handgun crafted for him by Kendo of Samurai Edge fame. Then we have the DLC weapon, Sentinel Nine, based on Leon's handgun he used in the movie Vendetta, originally designed for Resident Evil 6, but cut for unknown reasons. Next up we have the Punisher, the penetrating handgun. Then we have the Red 9, aka the Mauser. Penultimately, the compact and powerful Blacktail, and finally, Matilda, the burst fire pistol based on Leon's firearm during the Raccoon City incident. So how do you determine the best of them? As mentioned, it will ultimately depend on your playstyle, but let's look at the stats of the upgraded weapons to begin with. So if you're looking at it purely from numbers, Red 9 deals out the most damage, and although I haven't found any great way to test it, the Blacktail might have superior damage per second when you take into account the fire rate, reload speed, and so on. But it comes down to more than that. For instance, the Silver Ghost and Sentinel Nine's exclusive upgrades give them much higher critical rate chances than the other handguns. They seem to have a roughly 30% crit chance compared to the much lower chance of all the other weapons, which seems to be closer to 5%. Those criticals bump up the Silver Ghost's damage to around 6, fully upgraded. Then you have to consider stagger power. Red 9 has the most, Matilda has the least, whereas the Silver Ghost, Sentinel, Punisher are much alike. Stagger power allows you to follow up with a trusty melee attack, making it quite important in some playstyles. The less ammo you use, the more ammo you can save, so higher damage per bullet is of course rather important. And the Red 9 absolutely wins out on damage per shot, especially with the exclusive upgrade. But then you need to consider accuracy. Only the Silver Ghost, Sentinel, and Punisher can equip the laser sight. Not only does this make aiming far more accurate, it appears to make every single shot focused, increasing your critical chance as the reticle bloom vanishes or decreases. The Red 9, meanwhile, can be equipped with a stock, which increases stability and accuracy, but also increases inventory space too. If you fully invest in Red 9, which can be obtained in Chapter 4, it can be a workhorse weapon. You can use it on bosses, stronger enemies, and of course, standard enemies. Handgun ammo isn't too hard to come by, so your ammo economy should be relatively healthy too. But on the flip side, it does take up more space, and you'd probably want at least one other weapon with penetration or piercing, such as the Punisher, any rifle or shotgun. Conversely, if you prefer equipping yourself with several weapons, the Silver Ghost and Sentinel are both very strong once fully upgraded, with the ability to quite often one-shot enemies with a single critical, whilst also having the best accuracy thanks to the laser sight, which is a fairly small attachment too in terms of inventory space. The Punisher, meanwhile, loses out on the crits, but has the ability to penetrate shields, perfect for those pesky castle enemies, even if they aren't encountered that much in the grand scheme of things. The Blacktail, of course, is a pretty solid all-rounder, with damage just below that of the Red 9's, whilst being smaller. Whereas the Matilda, well, I must admit I'm not a huge fan of that one, but I'm sure there are situations in which it can be pretty useful. But if you asked me right now, I'd say that's probably the worst handgun. So yes, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to playstyle, how confident you are with your accuracy, and what other weapons you like to bring along with you. But in general, the Red 9 or the Silver Ghost would be the best handguns, in my opinion. If you're rolling with the Ghost, then you'd absolutely want, and have room for, stronger weapons for dealing with those threats above basic enemies. Sentinel 9 is much alike with the Ghost, arguably a little superior, given its higher capacity and rate of fire, but very slightly less damage. And of course, both of these weapons can be used from the very start of the game, which is always a plus. You can get to upgrading right away. One final thing to consider is on a fresh game, how will you plan your run out? You might want to focus on the Red 9, but you're going to need something to use in the meantime, for example. In situations like that, I think it's perfectly serviceable to use the Silver Ghost. you don't need to worry about grabbing the Punisher or something. The exclusive upgrades for weapons can enhance them a lot. After all, the Silver Ghost and Sentinel really start to shine with those exclusive upgrades, and the laser sight. Without them, the Blacktail is almost certainly a superior pick, as is the Punisher, as the stats are very similar, and you have the added bonus of extra penetration. The Silver Ghost is Leon's trademark pistol, and it does wonders in this game if you ask me. And if we're talking about professional S-rank runs and the like, well, most people seem to be using things like the Infinite Chicago Typewriter, or hand cannons or whatnot anyway, so it becomes perhaps a moot point. But the balance of the pistols is done rather well, and they are all great in their own ways. But what about things like the knife pistol run, where you only use a knife and a pistol? Well, in those cases, you're probably best off. You're probably going to have the easiest time with the Red 9 because of its high damage, which will make up for bosses where you might be missing out the damage from, shotguns, rifles, and magnums. But the high crit rate of the Silver Ghost, if you're using it especially from, the beginning, will definitely help out too. But yes, the balance is done well with the pistols, and it means that at the end of the day, just pick whichever one appeals to you the most. For example, the Red 9 is really good, but I'll probably never use it, because I just don't like how it looks. I'll tell you right now, in Resident Evil 5, I always use the P8. Not just because of the looks, but because it was effectively the weakest handgun per shot. And I loved that, as it let me stun things, so Chris could go demented punching them or neck snapping them into oblivion. And in Resident Evil 4's Remake, you can't go wrong with any of the pistols. And even if you decide to upgrade a gun and swap it out later, like maybe you want to use the Blacktail, which you can't use until fairly late in the game, well, you can always just start using the Silver Ghost or the Punisher or something, upgrade it a bit, and then sell it, and you'll get most of your money back by the time you want the Blacktail. Let me know in the comments which of the pistols you like the most. I'm waiting to hear from the Matilda fans out there. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one. What? What do you want? Why are you here?